Hi, welcome back to Storytime with Dad Booker. Appreciate you coming back. Apologize for the long delay in doing some readings. But today we're going to start back with reading from Sheriff in a Small Town, my new and approved version. This one has been upped in quality and quantity. We're now at 80,000 words instead of 50,000, so it's quite a few more stories. So let's begin. First chapter we're going to be reading is Swaps. Deputy Talbot walked into the courthouse sweating. It was so hot a day, he and Sheriff Rocky were taking turns on the rounds. Rocky got up from the desk and checked himself in the mirror before setting out to do his round. Talbot sank into the chair and loosened his collar. You might want to hit the Co-op or Joe's for a soda. I tell you, it's a scorcher today. Talbot turned the fan up higher and cooled off. Rocky walked out trying to stay in the shade. It didn't help much. As he approached the hot dog hut, he heard the commotion and saw men running out. The word robber reached his ear at the same time, and Rocky took off. The man saw Rocky in uniform and upped his speed. Rocky was dog-trotting, figuring the man would lose speed quickly in this heat. Sure enough, halfway down the street as they approached the field, the man slowed and then stopped. As Rocky approached, the man was bent double, trying to catch his breath. Rocky apprehended him easily, and they walked back to the hut to return the money he had stolen. Well, that and to get a cool drink. At the hot dog hut, the man returned the money and apologized. Rocky got a soda for himself and water for the robber. Walking to the courthouse, Rocky asked why. The man was apologetic. Well, I can't get a job anywhere and needed money. We were just about out of baby formula and, well, you get the picture. Rocky looked at the man and asked him to introduce him to his family. Shrugging, the man led the way. It was pretty far out of town and off a rural road. Their home was a one-bedroom cabin that looked as if it had been around forever. Water came from a river nearby, and he had built a makeshift outhouse. Inside was the bare necessities and hardly that. His wife was seated on a milk crate at a school table. The only cooling was open doors and windows. In her arms, her young baby cried. Rocky swore under his breath. The man had been telling the truth. She looked up at the side of her husband and the sheriff and sobbed. Oh, Tom, what have you done? Stepping outside, Rocky called on the radio for Talbot to stop off and pick up some formula and a few things from the co-op. There was a phone in the back of the office for emergencies, and, well, today looked like an emergency. Rocky walked around outside it for a bit, and when he heard Talbot arriving with the siren blaring, he opened the door. Going back inside, Tom was kneeling beside his wife, apologizing and letting her know he was going to jail. She looked with terror at Rocky when he stepped inside. The siren died out as Talbot screeched to a halt. With a stern countenance, Rocky cocked his head, indicating it was time for Tom to go. Talbot was standing beside the squad car and had the door open. Talbot's face was firm, but his lips had a tendency to twitch up into a smile. The man approached Talbot nervously. Talbot reached inside and pulled out a paper bag filled with formula and canned goods. Still inside were other bags of potatoes, onions, cabbage, and other vegetables that could keep well in a makeshift cellar. Returning inside, the man's wife was curled up on the floor crying. Tom put the bag on the table and held his wife and child. He rose and went outside to the squad car to wait. Talbot put him in the back seat while Rocky said some words to Tom's wife. On the way into town, Rocky learned a few things. The man was having a hard time finding work because he had recently gotten out of jail. He had been incarcerated for assault when a drunk man tried to rape his wife. Drunk was a friend of the cop on duty, and it was Tom who was jailed. Rocky got angry and vowed to do something for Tom and his family. Trouble was, what could he do? He couldn't use another deputy, and there wasn't a lot of places that would take a man who had been in prison. He stopped off at the station, and Tom walked straight into the cell and closed the door. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but the baby and his wife would eat for a while, and the sheriff had promised to make sure they were taken care of. Rocky pulled out a copy of the Sentinel and looked at Jobs. Says here the bank needs a new teller. Called over to Pastor Martin. Sir, have you got any suits in your locker? About, say, I don't know, 34 or 36 pants and a large jacket? Shirts, shoes too, if you got them. Fantastic. Be right over. Rocky had to wake Tom up. In his depressed state, he had fallen asleep. Tom, get up. We're heading over to the church. Tom was confused and shook his head to clear it. Once again, he sat in the squad car and was driven to the church. Inside, Pastor Martin gave him a razor, soap, plus a towel, and instructed him to clean himself up. Returning, freshly shaved and washed, he was given a suit complete with a clean shirt and tie. He worked hard on giving his shoes a good polish. As he looked in the mirror, combing his hair, Pastor Martin placed a couple more suits and shirts in a bag. Another bag had baby clothes and a few dresses for Tom's wife. The bags were placed in the trunk of the squad car. They all walked to the bank. Rocky had a short talk with the bank president, then Tom was introduced. Seated in a comfortable chair, Tom looked nervously at the man behind the desk. He was worried about how much the sheriff had told him about his past. Tom, Rocky has explained your previous circumstances and why. He has also explained about your false arrest. We'll leave the past where it belongs, in the past. We'll concentrate on the future. I need a teller, and Rocky here tells me I can trust you. That alone is good enough for me. We'll forgo the trial period and put you straight to work. Over the phone, he had the head teller come in and meet their newest employee and set him up for training. While Rocky had been working to get Tom his position, Talbot had rushed home. He had a spare bike that would do to get Tom to work until things got better for him. The bike was locked outside the bank and Tom was given the key. We'll drop the bags off at your place and let your wife know you'll be home after work. Tom excused himself and walked out with Talbot and Rocky. He was in tears of gratitude. They could have so easily locked him up, but instead they had given him and his family a new lease on life. Driving to drop off the bags, Talbot was in a very good mood. Sometimes it's great not doing your job, he chuckled. Rocky corrected him. Us was doing our job. We've got to enforce the law, but that doesn't mean we have to throw everybody in jail. Talbot agreed. Well, let's just call it an alternative to incarceration. On the way home after work, Rocky went to see Morgan and find out if he could suggest what else could be done. Rocky, you and Talbot did all you should have, and more than most would have. Something in your gut talks to you, and you have the intelligence to listen, same as you did with Talbot. You fellas did enough. You got him back on his feet, and now it's up to him. Rocky sank back in his chair and relaxed. It was good that his father-in-law was still willing to give him his advice. Rocky and Talbot checked on Tom and his wife every now and then as promised. Things seemed to be picking up for them. They had a crib for the baby and a new mattress and bed made a more comfortable sleeping arrangement. After the fourth visit, Talbot saw too many changes too fast. He mentioned this to Rocky as they were driving around a few weeks after getting Tom his position. Well, Rocky thought about it, and Talbot's sharp eye might be right, but Rocky wasn't happy to think too bad of Tom. We'll check on them again in a couple of days. In the meantime, I'll see how he's doing at the bank. The president greeted Rocky warmly. Sheriff, I can't thank you enough for sending Tom over. He's been a real asset and is making fast strides. He wants to learn everything and is doing well, so well that we felt the test was in order. He was over 2743 yesterday, the exact amount we put in. We now know he's truly honest. We'll keep close watch on him, so we don't want to make the same mistake twice. Rocky was satisfied on the way out. He congratulated Tom on how he had taken to banking. The bank president stepped outside for a smoke, and he and Rocky talked some more. I heard some more about Tom's predicament. Poor guy with a family and living off the rural road. I decided to hand him a sign-on bonus to make sure he and his family were a little more comfortable. It's made it easier for him to concentrate here. We took on a new security guard, too. Chester was getting too old and wasn't able to work the nights we needed him to. Caught him sleeping more than once. The new man seems to be doing all right, too. He stays awake and does his rounds often. I can see him at night, or at least his flashlight, as he walks around checking things. I think we're as secure as we can get." Rocky congratulated him and finished his walk around town. Back in the office, things were quiet. Rocky sorted the mail and was filling reports while Talbot mooched around trying to find things to do. His constant sighs and humming as he sought out employment was distracting Rocky, so he sent him home to Michaela. Spending the evening at the courthouse, he prepared to do a final walk around town before heading home himself. As he passed the bank, he saw the flashlight moving around just as the president had said. Knocking at the window, he chuckled as flashlight went dashing towards the back. Not particularly brave, but at least any criminal would know someone was around. They could call for assistance. Finishing his round, he headed home. Next morning, Agnes was up early fixing breakfast while Rocky made the bed and tidied up. Tomorrow it would be Rocky's turn to make breakfast, and he had a new recipe he was anxious to try called a breakfast bake. Downstairs, he was more than a little surprised to see breakfast consisted of biscuits, sausage, and baked beans. Talbot agreed to pick him up and was already seated and digging in enthusiastically. "It's not breakfast, but darn good." Rocky sat down to his own portion. Yeah, it was an unusual breakfast, as Talbot had said, but he wasn't about to hurt Agnes's feelings. He dug in and found that it actually was pretty good. Kissing her goodbye, Rocky had to practically drag Talbot out as he was on his third helping. In the squad car, Rocky rolled down the window just in case. Agnes was glad to get them out of the house. She had a surprise in store for Rocky and needed to get to the bank quickly. In her lockbox were 100 Eisenhower silver dollars. Each one was now worth about $15. She felt it was a good time to turn them in. With that kind of money, she could get Rocky a new truck. She figured his older one could go stay with her dad. Agnes waved to Talbot as he was out doing the drive around town. As she passed the courthouse, she knocked on the door, then burst away towards the bank at top speed. When Rocky opened the door, there was nobody there. Shrugging, he closed the door and went for a walk. Excuse me. He was passing the... You'd think that's what's supposed to help. He was passing the bank when the head teller rushed out the door and collided with him. Pulling him inside, he was escorted to the bank president's office. Seated in front of the desk were Agnes and Tom. Agnes looked angry, and Tom was panicking. The president had Agnes's lockbox, and when he opened it, it contained $101 bills. Agnes burst out, "There should be 100 silver dollars, not paper ones." The president interceded. "We don't know for sure what happened. It seems someone replaced the silver with paper, figuring it was dollar for dollar. When I saw Tom here flipping a silver dollar, I brought him in." Tom turned his frightened eyes to Rocky. "A lucky piece, and I've had it for years." "I can't prove it, and since I already have a record, I guess there isn't a way to ask you to take my word." Agnes laid a hand on his arm, her anger subsiding for the moment. "Tom, nobody can arrest you without proof, and simply having a silver dollar in your possession isn't proof." Rocky examined the lockbox. It doesn't look as if it's been forced. Who has access to the keys? "Well, the head teller, myself, and Tom here. He's been training for extra duties." The bank president muttered softly, "I just hope I didn't choose the wrong person." Tom paled and his head sunk. Was he ever going to able to live down his past? Rocky interceded. "Sir, let's not jump the gun here. Is there any way to check with customers if any other swaps have been made? Sheriff, we may run into problems if we ask customers to check their boxes. We don't know what anyone has in them, so how could we know if they were lying?" Rocky thought the best solution was to keep things quiet for now and wait until someone else reported a swap or something missing. The bank president agreed, and Tom was sent back to work. Rocky stayed in the office with the president a little while longer and then stopped to talk to Tom on his way out. "I was talking to the boss. He's willing to take your word, and I didn't have to say a thing about it. Your reputation here is based on what you've done since coming on board. Like Agnes said, just having the silver dollar isn't proof. Just keep doing your job. I promise I'll clear this up quick as I can. Tom was grateful that the bank and sheriff were backing him up. That night, Agnes was doing the night walk with Rocky. They sat outside the bank watching the light moving round. It seemed the watchman was pacing back and forth. Rocky knocked on the door. From Agnes's point of view, it looked as if the watchman had rushed to the back room and then returned to answer the door. A bright light shined on Rocky's face and quickly lowered. Sorry, Sheriff. Something I can do for you? Just checking to see if everything's all right. Yep, been a quiet night. I have to keep walking around or I'll fall asleep. As he talked, the flashlight swung from his arm, making a bar of light on the pavement. Rocky said goodnight and went to finish his round. As they walked, Rocky couldn't rid himself of the thought that something just wasn't right. The next day, the head cashier came barging into the courthouse. We got another swap. Rocky and Talbot rushed over to the bank. In the president's office was a small, balding man looking very upset. The lockbox was open and a roll of stamps slid to the front. I had a valuable collection of stamps in there, and now all I have is this here roll. Talbot asked who had access, the same as Rocky had. Tom still had access to the lockboxes, and Talbot immediately brought him in. Tom denied any knowledge of what happened to the stamps, but you could see the people were struggling to believe him. Now in panic mode, he was shaking. The president thought Tom wasn't going to be good for much after the rest of the day. He was told to close out his drawer and go home for the rest of the day. He was made clear that he wasn't fired. He just wanted to give him a chance to clear his head and calm down. Rocky and Talbot sat in the president's office. Rocky was looking pensively at the floor. Something's bothering me. I was doing my rounds last night. As you said, I could tell that your watchman was doing his walk rounds by the flashlight swinging. Rocky sat upright. When I came to the door, he was midpoint, about where the front of the teller's cage is. When I knocked, he ran to the back and re-emerged again. Rocky leaned back on the desk. Sir, can you tell me why you'd go to the back instead of just opening the door? He was 10 feet from it. The president shrugged and tried to think of a reason, but couldn't. Maybe Parker took off his gun belt and had to put it on again, suggested Talbot. Rocky tried to picture a night guard's uniform. The gun belt was on squared away, and the uniform wasn't in disarray, so it didn't look as if it had been put on hurriedly. Rocky stood and motioned to Talbot that they were leaving. Talbot and I will be outside tonight. Would you mind joining us at, say, 2200? We may need to go inside quietly. Besides, you might like to be here on the rest if there is one. The president made a note to arrive at the time specified. Rocky and Talbot arrived early and sat on the bench outside. Around 21:30 it was dark enough that they could see the flashlight making its rounds. Talbot, the guard is about as tall as you. Try and match his pacing. Talbot did a pretty good match, but he had to shorten his stride by about half. Matching the turn looked odd. It was as if the man performed a half circle instead of a short, swift reverse turn. Talbot noticed that the guard always stayed near the window so that the light was visible. Well, now you bring it to my attention. It does kind of seem strange. He watched Talbot as he continued to walk with short, choppy steps. Rocky had almost seen enough. Talbot, keep walking, but put your hand where the handle of the flashlight should be. Talbot had to bend over to match the swing of the light. Man, his back's got to be hurting like hell if he's in that position all night long. What's the point, anyway? Rocky started laughing. Hey, do you know the song Minnie the Moocher? Talbot stopped, holding his posture. He answered in the affirmative, but asked why. Well, in that position, you look like Cab Calloway singing it. Rocky grinned as an idea came to him. Outside, back of the bank, was a patch of grass with a few trees. He led the way and did a thorough search. What he found seemed to have pleased him. Well, we're ready now. The president didn't seem to understand. What were you looking for? Dog poop. Rocky felt the time was ripe to go into the bank. Sir, would you and Talbot enter through the front door while I enter through the rear? The president handed over a key and walked swiftly to the front. Something was going to happen, and he was starting to become enthusiastic. Talbot opened the door, requesting that he stay behind him. When the door opened, the alarm went off and a tan blur hurled to the rear, barking loudly. "Shut up, darn dog!" came a voice from the back. All lights came on and the guard was standing, trying to remove the flashlight off his jumping bull mastiff. Rocky slammed the back door after having enough time to see what was happening. The guard made us pull the sidearm, but a warning from the front and the sight of Talbot with his gun already drawn was enough. He shook off his gun belt and laid it on the table. On the table was a stack of silver certificate $5 bills, while next to them was an equivalent stack in current fives. An open safety deposit box rested on the table, and the guard tried to talk himself clear. "Hey, look, it's not like I really stole anything. I put in exactly the same amount as I took out." "Well, perhaps, but not at the same value. Let's go to your place and take a look around, shall we?" Clearing up the case was a bit of a mess, and some of the things had already been sold already. But thanks to Parker's neurotically orderly record keeping, almost everything was recovered. Tom was cleared of all suspicion and received an apology from the bank. Rocky and Talbot were convinced to redouble their efforts and hurry Tom's case through more strongly and clear his record officially. It might take a while, but they promised to do whatever they had to. All right, so that's the end of the first chapter of the second half of Sheriff in a Small Town. Now, I appreciate you if you watched this entire reading. I really appreciate it, and we're gonna do something here. Now, I'm going to remove this part of the tape. You can tell I'm old, can't you? I'm going to remove this part of the video after what I'm about to tell you happens. So here's the deal. If you have watched this entire thing and you are the first person to email me that you've seen this particular part of it at let's use timeiswaswillbe@gmail.com, and let me know, give me your name and your address. I will email you back and let you know that a fresh copy of Sheriff in a Small Town, the new book, I've got some extras here. So we've got some extras. If you're the first one, then I'll send you a free copy. Okay? So I hope somebody sends me an email within the next couple of days, or until I change over the video. Once I do, deals it off. So I look forward to hear from you. Appreciate you watching, and thank you so much for joining me on Storytime with Dave Bucker. We'll see you on the next go round. Bye.